Good afternoon. If you're in Eastern, if you're in New York City, Eastern time zone, and good day, good evening, wherever you're dialing in from. So happy to have everyone here. My name is Matthew Camp. I'm Director of Government Relations and Community Engagement at Teachers College at Columbia University, and happy to host the TC Take Action Initiative on Media Literacy in New York. And today we're joined by some very special guests who I'll hand it over to in just a moment. I want to give a shout out to Mariana and Michaela, Katie, our student employees here who are helping us tonight or today. And and we will be walking through, I'll just give a quick overview of the agenda. So I'll be handing over to Nan Mead with the Center for Educational Equity at Teachers College in a minute, and Chris Sperry from Project Look Sharp. And we'll be sharing a couple of videos about the importance of media literacy. We'll be discussing the digital citizens report. We're hoping to be joined by Assemblymember Daniel O'Donnell. There's been, as you know, a major storm by Albany, so stay tuned to see his whereabouts. Maybe Nan, his legislative director, might be joining in his place, so stay tuned. Always exciting in Albany. And that will segue into, please stick around till the end. We have an opportunity to write directly to your legislator, especially if you're in New York. We have our voter voice platform, which allows you to send messages, and that's really where the power lies in this room, is reaching right out to your legislator. So stick around. For all we're asking is just about an hour, give or take. So I'll hand it over to my colleague, Nan Mead from the Center for Educational Equity. Thank you, Nan. Good to see you.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt. Good afternoon, and welcome to the TC Take Action event on media literacy. My name is Nan Mead. I'm the Director of Outreach and Communications at the Center for Educational Equity at Teachers College. The center, for those who are unfamiliar, was founded in 2005 by Michael Rebell, who's a professor of education policy and law at Teachers College, along with Jessica Wolf, who is the center's director of policy and research. The center is the convener of the Democracy Ready New York Coalition, which is a statewide, nonpartisan, multi-generational group of educators, youth-serving organizations, advocates, and individuals dedicated to expanding civic learning and civic readiness. The coalition engages in research and collective action for that purpose. And the coalition was founded in 2018, is now part of the National Civics Now Coalition, which is a program of iCivics, a national organization founded by former Associate Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, and currently Associate Justice Sonia Sotomayor is a board member. So the coalition was founded in 2018 by Michael and Jessica. They conducted some meetings over the course of the prior 2-year period. There were a number of things going on at the time. I think there are many educators in the room, so some of you are familiar with this. The state education department included civic readiness as part of its anticipated outcome for a K through 12 education, along with preparedness for college or career. So Democracy Ready operates in a committee structure. One of those committees specifically focuses on media literacy. And the reason for this really goes back to a case that many of you know called the Campaign for Fiscal Equity. We think of it as a landmark school funding case, but in the decision, there were also some language embedded in there about preparation to be able to serve on juries and for voting in a knowledgeable way. The coalition, as part of its collective action, published a paper in 2020 called Developing Digital Citizens, and I'll drop a link in the chat in a moment. But its recommendations really form the basis for our advocacy in today's session. And in a moment, I'm going to introduce Chris Sperry, who will talk a little bit more about that. But in very broad strokes, the advocacy around media literacy education really has to do with, first of all, getting a baseline of what kind of media literacy education is going on right now in the state of New York, making sure that all schools are adequately staffed, both in terms of having a library media specialist in all K through 12 schools, as well as the as well as adequate professional development opportunities, not only for library media specialists, but also for other educators across all content areas. And finally, we want to see some alignment of media literacy standards across, certainly all of the core subjects, but even in other subjects such as health, et cetera, technology. So this effort's really coming on the heels of Civic Learning Week. We just spent all of last week offering a series of virtual events covering various topics. One of those topics included a very concentrated session on media literacy. And so with that, I will introduce Chris Sperry, who hosted that event. And by the way, we can make links available to all of these events. They are available for distribution. They will be at some point go up on our website, but we'll be circulating them very shortly. Chris Sperry is the Director of Curriculum and Staff Development at Project Look Sharp at Ithaca College. And so it is my pleasure to welcome Chris to the conversation. How are you, Chris?
Nan, thanks so much. Thanks for everybody for being here. I'm going to take this precious time and jump right into that. If you'll give me screen share capacity, that would be great. I taught in a wonderful public alternative school, a tremendous mix of kids throughout upstate New York and Ithaca for over 40 years. Social studies, media studies, English language arts. I was an instructional coach. But throughout that, I also worked with Dr. Cindy Scheib to co-found Project Look Sharp, a media literacy initiative back in 1996. Actually, I'm going to stop screen share so I don't forget to check the sound optimization.
If you do have any problems with video, I do have them loaded up.
Terrific. Great. Thanks. So Project Look Sharp's a not-for-profit based at Ithaca College, been around since the mid-90s. But after the publication of the Democracy Ready Digital Citizens Report, that really helped us with not only conceptualizing the central role that librarians can play in integrating media literacy, but also with getting funding for a 2-year initiative that we're most of the way through, Librarians as Leaders for Media Literacy in New York State. That is a partnership with New York State SLISA, the School Library Systems Association, working across the state. So you'll hear about both of those, about Look Sharp and that initiative. But let's just step back for a minute and ground ourselves in just the data. Almost 10 hours a day of media use by teenagers in the United States on average, but not counting school time and not counting anything for school. I mean, almost 10 hours a day of working with sometimes books, but predominantly video and recorded music and other kinds of media. And that was in 2015. That was in 2015. We know from the JAMA Pediatrics report that recreational screen time, so that doesn't count books or recorded music, doubled during the pandemic. And that doesn't count any online school time as well. So this is an extraordinary amount of time that our young people are experiencing the world through mediated forms. I also want to reference this study by Kahn and Boyer about how students, high school students, in this case, assess what's true and what's not true in the media. And the Kahn and Boyer study separated out and disaggregated students with high levels of political knowledge and students with low level of political knowledge. And as a social studies teacher for decades, I would certainly assume that my students who paid attention in class, scored well on the tests, who were really interested in politics and government, would be better at assessing what's true than students who had low levels of interest, motivation, knowledge. And in fact, what Kahn and Boyer found in this empirical study is it's not true. That these more motivated, more knowledgeable, more engaged students were no better at assessing what's true in the news than their peers that had little interest or motivation. And Kahn and Boyer identified that it was confirmation bias that was at the heart of this, that that these more motivated students had kind of reasoning that had them find information that favored what they already believed and disconfirm other points of view and other perspectives. And that confirmation bias is core, as we know today, in democracy. Because if the facts don't matter, it is how we interpret what's true and what's not true that's the dominant factor in what we believe. Then what do we do about that? And Conan Boyer went on to study media literacy strategies that really did help students become much better at identifying what's true and what's not true. They had 3 factors, all of the ones that were successful. They had students consider different perspectives and different points of view. They had students justify their own opinions, not just listen to the teacher, but justify what do they think, give evidence to back it up. And thirdly, and I think really important, they had them reflect on their own thinking. They had to be able to identify, oh, I have a confirmation bias and I'm a liberal. So every time I listen to Fox News, I assume everything is wrong, or vice versa from a different perspective. And I'm onto that. I recognize that. So I have to be very careful to make my critical thinking strong when I'm listening to things that confirm what I believe. So I don't just take that at face value, and to be open to the possibility that these other sources might have some truth to them or not. This is going to be core to democracy in an age where our students are getting so much of their information and their ideas about the world from mediated sources. So how do we address this? We believe very strongly at Project Look Sharp and the ML3 initiative that we need to teach students to ask questions, to continually ask questions so that it becomes a habit for them to ask questions about media messages. And that habit can only happen if that questioning process is integrated across all curriculum, across all grade levels. And it gives all students these habits of critical thinking. And that's only going to happen if it can support and help teachers in what they're already teaching. So when they learn nutrition in first grade, they're looking at a cereal box and asking, is there fruit in Fruit Loops? How would I know? And why would they make it look like there is fruit? Or endocrine disruptors in high school biology, looking at 2 different website constructions, thinking about who produced this and who produced this and why are they different, and all in between in all different subject areas and grade levels. And this is on our website. I will put in the chat the link to Project Look Sharp's website. All the material and information is free. So imagine if throughout K through 12 education, in developmentally appropriate ways that supported the teaching of the core content and the standards in all different subject areas, students developed habits of asking, who made this? For what purpose? Who might benefit from this? Who might be harmed by this? What are messages in here, content about X? So the health questions or the math questions. What techniques are they using to communicate these messages, as in the charts and the graphs and the map, or the posters or the paintings or the websites or the video games? What's the context of this? Is this credible? Should I believe this source? Why or why not? And how would I assess this information from other sources? What impact does this have on me? What are my emotional responses? How do I interpret this different than other people? And how do my own background, my own identity influence how I interpret? And might I share this with others? How and why? So these are the kinds of questions we're working with teachers to be able to integrate across the curriculum. So I am going to show you, I'm going to cut to a video. The first time this has been publicly launched, we just finished it in the last couple of days, explaining this work.
All you can do is read print and write print, you're not getting the full benefits of being literate in the world anymore.
Media is all around us and we are bombarded with it from the day we're born. And it's the pictures that you see in the books you read when you're little. It's the videos that you watch. It's the toys that you play with. The more 21st century situated interpretation of what literacy is.
Media literacy is exactly what print literacy is, except that we add the ability to communicate and analyze with pictures and sounds.
You're looking at maps, you're looking at social media feed, you're watching Netflix and it's giving you information, it's entertaining you, it's persuading you. So if you can help students be a bit more cognizant that that's happening, you're empowering them.
Teaches me how to learn in a sense, because it's teaching me how to watch and how to look, keep a mindful eye, and how to be aware.
And we want them to not just be consumers of it, but to be able to critique it and identify what techniques are being used and how that's affecting how they think about what they're seeing.
It really should be a requirement that we should learn with multiple aspects of media, not just books.
Constructivist media decoding takes general concepts like inquiry and discussion and analysis, and it makes them real in a concrete way on the ground. That's what CMD does.
Do you think these images reinforce stereotypes or challenge stereotypes?
100% enforces stereotypes.
Why?
Because it's saying that men only do the hard work or the heavy lifting.
Just looking at the cover, you think they write Keep the Cat books for? Who is their audience? Who do they want to read that, Kennedy?
But us.
Who's us? If you do think, yes, this book is for teenagers, why do you think?
Do you think that was done purposefully?
Memes are usually made to like bring joke to or kind of like make something less serious, more funny.
How would we find out about these claims that were made in that short little video? Where would we go to find out? Okay, I'm gonna switch over to the PowerPoint. So tell me if you're not seeing this. I'm going to talk about the role of librarians in this work. How can we scale this work up so that all teachers are, as a part of their regular teaching, not adding on time and supporting what their standards are, what they need to already do, are having students ask questions and they're asking questions of the students. These kinds of media literacy questions. How do we do that? We need leadership. We need leadership in each building. And really, there is only one person in each building, generally across the state, that are trained as information literacy specialists, that are connected to all students and all curriculum, have mapped the curriculum and collaborate with all educators and with administrators, or in an instructional coach position. And it is, for the schools that have them, it is the school librarian and the role of the school librarian. So I'm going to take us back to another short 1-minute video listening to school librarians from New York State.
Because this work is designed to be integrated into every subject area, a librarian is just a natural fit.
The school libraries are the hub of the school. They teach the entire school. They collaborate with the teachers.
No matter what they're looking at, a tweet, a lyric, a poster, a painting, they will now look at all of those things with these background questions. If we start drilling them into their brains in art class and health class and social studies class in the library, now they know, she's showing me something, you know, who made that? I don't know. All of a sudden, they're going to start doing the thing that we want their brains to do.
This is the role of the library media specialist, is to be the media literacy instructional coach and collaborative educator with their classroom and content area teachers.
Training librarians to do CMD and having librarians help train teachers make sure that every student will get to do this, not as a one-off, not as a one-time thing, but as a routine way of learning.
What do you think the creator of this media wanted you to think?
Okay. Librarians, the key leaders in terms of doing this work, but people also need resources. If you go to the Project Look Sharp website, maybe I'll take you there right now very briefly. And if we type in the word civics and hit search, you're going to come up with 327 free lessons for integrating question-based media analysis into the teaching of all different civics issues at all different levels. These are just in the last 2 weeks that we've posted. Many of these, like this one, made by librarians in New York State. If you want to filter even more specifically, you could, for instance, do age level and do lower elementary And it will bring us to a much smaller number of lessons. So 3. What does the dollar bill tell you about the United States? And young students decoding that media, the dollar bill. Why vote using different video clips, sculptures of King, and messages there. Or if you wanted to search just your math teacher and you want to find physics lessons that use media decoding for this work. Polling on structural racism, what do different people believe, changing our media habits in the pandemic, social media and elections, what's the connections, who's power in Congress, etc. So many different options and possibilities for teachers, because teachers and librarians need the kind of resources, and they need free and accessible resources that demonstrate this work, that give them the kinds of questions, and most importantly, that give them quick access to the kinds of inquiry-based, question-based, student-centered, curriculum-driven lessons to be able to do this work. And that's what we've been working for 25 years at Project Look Sharp to do. Democracy. And the Founding Fathers talked about the shift from monarchy to democracy. They talked about the fact that this can't happen without education, without citizens able to read the media of the day, which was newspapers created by political parties. For the first 80 years of our country's history, it was almost always political parties. They created the Connecticut Democrat or the Arizona Republican, and some of them still have that name. And the citizens knew that they needed to get multiple papers because they had partisan perspectives on the news. That was part of our nation's history for many years, and that public education and literacy, and in that essence, media literacy, was a core part of that. And at that same time, some of those same founding fathers participated in passing laws, particularly in slave states, that made it illegal for people of African descent to teach people of African descent to read and to write. And why? Because they understood the power of literacy, not as powerfully as Frederick Douglass did, that literacy was about freedom. It was about human liberation. It was about the ability to read the world and write the world. And what does that mean today in our media, hypermedia saturated culture? We must have all students be literate in creating, but also reading and analyzing media messages. So I'll end with listening to some students talk about this work from their perspective. So tell me about this kind of learning.
I like this learning because it's cool.
It's very interactive, but it's also learning about other people and what they think about whatever the topic is.
Collaborative learning, because you're asking the audience and students, and I feel like a lot of teachers will just put the answer up on a board and expect you to memorize it.
It's like a way of showing not just the teacher's opinion, because sometimes the teacher's opinion has different opinions than the student, so it's a way of showing everyone's opinion.
Media literacy has made me realize that there's a lot of perspectives, and just because they disagree doesn't mean that one is wrong or right.
What the immediate thing that comes to my mind is, okay, who made this? What is their purpose for making this? What are my own biases, and how is that informing my opinion of this video?
It's literally like teaching you how to learn.
Our goal is to reach all students in New York State, to shift culture, to improve teaching practice, to reform education to be more inquiry-based, have critical thinking at the center of what teachers do in all subject areas and all grade levels. You know, it's a pretty high aspiration, but it is one that we've got our eye on. Okay. I will kick it back to Nan, but just to say this work has been growing with support from SLISA all throughout the state, with the extraordinary inspiration and leadership from school librarians and educators and teachers and administrators and others. But it needs your support in terms of the legislative support to really make this systemic and happen for all students across all of our great state. Nan, back to you.
Thank you, Chris. You really embody the advocacy work and what you do every day. It's amazing. I put in the chat during Chris's presentation, there are tremendous disparities in students' access to librarians, even in schools where they are required, which is primarily in grades 7 through 12. We're hoping to change that with this advocacy work and expand that to all elementary, middle, and secondary schools. And so where the disparities exist, and this is actually, there are a number of studies as part of my graduate work. I examine this issue not only in terms of where the disparities lie, which unsurprisingly falls along socioeconomic and racial lines, but also other ripple effects of the absence of a librarian. So things like not scoring at proficiency levels on state assessments, graduation rates, not meeting the state average, more students who are held over beyond 4 years of high school. There are tons of statistics that are correlated, of course I can't say causal, but that are connected to the absence of a school librarian. So I'm gonna pivot a little bit. I want to take this opportunity to introduce Katie Loos. The center always has an army of graduate students who work in the office with us on various initiatives, and Katie has been very active with our Democracy Ready work. So Katie, you can unmute your mic and tell us what you do at the center and how your work relates to our initiatives related to media literacy.
Sure. Thank you, Nan, and thank you, Chris, Matt, and everyone. So I'm Katie. I am a graduate assistant at the Center for Educational Equity, and I lead our youth engagement initiatives. So I am also a student at Teachers College. I'm in the EPSA program. I study education policy there. I'm finishing up this year. But I work with a group of about 10 to 15 students now from across high schools in New York State, and we are a part of the Democracy Ready New York Coalition. So we have a few students who are with our different coalition members, a few who've joined us just from finding us from their teachers or online. And we led last week a conversation hosted by the students with different local legislators, the Chancellor, Board of Regents, Chancellor Young, as well as a couple other speakers, an educator from Salamanca, New York, and then a student, Eugenia Bamfo, who is a part of Why Vote and is from here in New York City, where I am. So we lead the students in having these different conversations. I remember polling them pretty early on when we started organizing this event that we had last week, just considering what are the different topics that we as a group care about, what do the students care about, and a major focus was media literacy and kind of navigating this hyper-saturated environment of social media, now AI, all of these different changing news cycles, what their families are saying, what they're seeing on TikTok. So we had a lot of conversations about that and how that can kind of blur the lines and confuse them about how they have a voice in any of it. So it was really great to see those conversations that they had last week during our event. And Nan mentioned that we will be sharing all of these videos on our website to come. But yeah, that's a bit about the work that we've been doing in the past couple months with this group of students.
And then I think, because we have a broad coalition, so we're working with one group in particular who has introduced this idea of perhaps setting up a training session for our youth cohort in teaching them how to do things like write editorials, which is really amazing opportunity for them. So stay tuned on that initiative. But we think that these sort of hands-on learning activities are exactly kind of what we need to, to make for this expansion into civic learning. So thank you, Katie, for that discussion. And now I'm going to pivot over to Margot Cruz. So unfortunately, Assemblymember O'Donnell couldn't make it with us today, but I wanted to, and we're very pleased to have representation from his office. Margot is Assemblymember O'Donnell's legislative director. For those who are not familiar with the Assemblymember, he actually is the Assemblymember representing Teachers College, the 69th Assembly District, and he is also a senior member of the Education Committee. So with that, I want to welcome Margot. She's been a terrific partner as we've moved into the next phase of the advocacy work. So the coalition, kind of done some work prior to this legislative session. We are hoping, with the momentum built in New Jersey, being the first state to pass a media literacy law, that we can build on that momentum and get something similar done in New York in terms of requirements. So with that, Margot, if you want to unmute your microphone, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Nan. And just thanks for talking. Assemblymember O'Donnell sends his regards from upstate New York, where there's currently no internet, but luckily I'm here in Manhattan, so able to have internet and everything. The snow has been crazy. So, as you all know, Assemblymember O'Donnell has been working on these issues of digital citizenship and media literacy for many years, often with many of you. And I'm here and happy to talk about the legislative landscape this year and in the past. Over 10 years ago, Assemblymember O'Donnell wrote and passed DASA, which was aimed to create an environment free of bullying, harassment, and just generally make school a safe place that students can come to learn and be a part of their community and a part of whatever community that they feel a part of, as well as the librarian bill that Danny's carried for many years. So of course, recently, as Nan mentioned, this issue has been getting a lot of attention, media literacy and related digital issues that are coming up now and have been bubbling for many years. In New Jersey, in New York, we have a bill about facial recognition in Madison Square Garden. So it's definitely a hot topic this year and in general. Danny's been excited to work on DASA edits for a long time now. And part of his continued work this year has been to update this legislation. This was a landmark bill that addressed school climate, and seeing the online environmental impacts on learning and school behavior has been very interesting, especially since the COVID-19 pandemic. We're seeing tragic and terrifying suicide numbers and attempts among students, and school climate has been a very, very important issue all over the state and all the country. We can't ignore the isolation that students are feeling as a result of COVID-19, all the staying home, and just generally the way that students have ended up having to interact only through the internet. And many students end up interacting, as many people were saying, even just a couple minutes ago, through social media. People have a lot of their interactions filtered in this way. So all of these issues are important and come together in various ways. And, one of the things that's important for students feeling part of community is to make sure that they are aware and learn about the impacts of deepfakes, fake news, and that nasty posts online have real world consequences and effects within their community, with friends, with other classmates. And, these updates are just part of an overall addressing of the school curriculum and how students see each other in the school building and online as well. So if you'd like to check out the details, look in the whole technocratic side of things. The bill number is A5318. And we're excited to work on this bill, and please feel free to reach out with questions, memos of support, and emails to your legislators supporting this bill. Thanks so much.
Great. Thanks so much, Margot, and thanks for that bill number. So I will turn it back over to Matt, because I think we are at the juncture where we're ready to proceed with our prepared advocacy piece and some reflective thoughts around what we've just seen and heard.
Definitely. Thanks so much, Nan. Thanks, Margot, for that policy landscape perspective. And is that a brand new bill?
Yeah, that's a new bill.
Amazing. So the people in this Zoom are learning about it really. That's DASA, right? Dignity for all students. Does that include media literacy?
Yeah, that's an update to Dignity for All Students, and it includes digital citizenship and media literacy. They fit in really well with the DASA citizenship requirements, and it just sort of flows together from there, but you can see it online.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. Nan, maybe you could drop a link to that. Actually, I've got it right here. I'll drop a link to the so people can take a look at that.
Sure.
What's really neat is our chance now to take action. We've got a platform set up so people can easily write letters to their state legislators. And it's called Voter Voice. You've probably seen it if you've written letters with other interest groups or advocacy organizations. Makes it very easy. And the most important part to the 50 or so people in this room is telling your own story, telling your story of why maybe students in your classroom, friends, neighbors, relatives who have a need for more literacy, or speaking, of course, from the I perspective of why you think this is important. So right now, the Voter Voice platform we've got, and I could actually quickly update it to include the bill number if you think that's helpful, Margot, is ready to go, and take a look at that. It just, as you're reading it, I'll update with the bill number, because this links to the Digital Citizens Report, which is a report that the Center for Educational Equity just released, and it has about 5 different recommendations. What I think I'll do, and I'll look to your advice on this, Margot, is add in the subject line to that letter. It currently says strengthen media literacy in New York. Do you think we should add that particular bill number?
That would be great. You mean this is the letter to from individuals to their there's something. Yeah, that would be great.
Correct.
Wonderful.
I'll think on the fly. Yeah, Nan.
Quick point of clarification. So the library staffing will go in as will that go in as amendment under 90? I keep saying 92.2.
That's oh, that's in section 275, but it's
section 275.
Assemblymember O'Donnell's bill for library staffing. Yeah. So it's going to be an amendment to that bill, huh?
Is that a separate number?
Yes, although that one doesn't have a bill number yet. We're still, unfortunately, index is a little slow this year. I don't want to throw them under the bus. It was a crazy year with all the bill introductions had to happen while we were starting session. So just a little inside baseball.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
okay.
Yeah.
We'll include it. Well, it's included in the letter, so I think it will. Just having the force of the impact within the letter, I think folks will get the message.
Great.
So,
yeah.
Just so people know what they're getting into, the boilerplate language is already there, talking about the importance of media literacy. The bill number is now officially in the subject line. So when you take action, when you write this letter, your state, assuming you're based in New York State, your state senator and assembly member will pop up, and they'll be getting that message. So people like Margot and her staff will open it up, today. And you could customize that letter to say, how it affects your community, however you want to tailor it. I'll just zip up and leave you all to take a look at that. I know it's hard to listen and read at the same time, so we'll just take another minute or so for people to work on that. When you're done, just one last thing. Put a thumbs up in the chat and in the Zoom, or maybe a message in the chat to say that you've completed that letter. If people don't see the bill number, just try hitting refresh on that link that I've sent. Let me know if you've got any problems. I'll just keep dropping in the chat, the link in the chat. Check. Oh, okay. I think I see what the problem is. Yeah. I see it.
Okay.
Great. I see a couple letters have gone out already. I've fixed the issue of the bill number in the subject line. Thanks for your patience. They were getting this information hot off the press, so your messages to legislators will be very, very relevant. So I think that's working. Margaret, does it look good on your end now?
Yeah, it looks great on my end. Thank you so much.
Okay.
This is so exciting. Thanks. We've
learned working with legislative staff that having that bill number in the subject line is very important. So thanks for your patience. We're doing it in, like I said, hot off the press, so it's very exciting. On my end, I'm seeing on the back end a couple of letters already sent. Very, very exciting. Let's see here. Yep, I already see 6 letters have gone out. Very cool. Margaret, I have a question for you while we're waiting for folks to fill out those letters of support. I had worked in 2 different legislative offices over the years, and this is going back a while. So we would get letters and faxes, emails, and Twitter. I don't think it was even around. And what I had to do as a legislative staff for Margot was type a little report about what the constituents thought about, right? And logging that in. So I'd say, oh, today we heard from a dozen constituents who cared about, you know, media literacy, for example. And then that report would go to chief of staff. They would talk about it with the elected official, the senator or assembly member. And that would actually influence how they made a decision. Does that still happen today?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Actually, in our office, when we get calls from constituents or emails, or even they stop by, we have a sheet where we write everyone down, support or not support, and then we take down their more detailed feedback of, you know, why they support, what their interest is in this issue, or maybe why they disagree with it and how they feel about the overall issue, and we bring all those comments to the assembly member. And yeah, so this is really, really wonderful to see. Sincerely, so exciting, because I see the back end of it, so it's really nice to see the front end and just see everyone's involvement. It's so funny because if you talk to someone just random on the street, they would be like, "Really? Do you think they read those?" Like every single day. Like all day long phone calls. Yeah, but it's really interesting to see how people got involved, why they care about it, and these things really, really do have an impact. In fact, people really underestimate it. So this is so wonderful to see. Thank you.
So inspiring to hear that, and thank you for telling us your perspective and how you read these letters and the stories that really matter. I dropped in the chat a link to Open States. So you could find your legislators if you're outside of New York State. As Dan mentioned, some other states, including New Jersey, have already passed things like this. So it'd be great to build momentum. Of course, you have the option to make a phone call. That also is a very effective way of reaching out to your legislator. For the curious, I've mentioned this in previous Take Action workshops, but there's actual political science field studies done that show that calling and reaching out to your legislator moves the needle. It actually influences on how that legislator votes in an empirical causal way. That study is by Cole and Bergen, I think are the two authors, C-O-L-E. So I could follow up if you want to read a journal article, but the data is there. I think we have a question in the chat here about a state Senate bill. I would defer to Margo if that is in the works or how that works in the Senate side.
Yeah, it's in the works. Can't share any news now, but we're looking forward to. So yeah, and the empirical study is really nice to see. I mean, I see it in action every day. Even with other offices when we talk to them, and they'll even say, "Oh, this constituent said this to me" or something like that. So, yeah, just re-emphasizing that it's wonderful to see. Yeah.
So our numbers are going up. This is happening live. We've got 10 letters that have gone out to legislators throughout the state. Please, continue to give us those thumbs up or drop questions or comments in the chat. I know it takes a few moments to read what actually you'll be sending. Of course, there's the 5 recommendations from the Building Digital Citizens Report. And you're able, of course, to do this offline on your own time. Anything else we should know over the next few moments while people kind of continue to write their letters?
I see someone asked a question about a call or an email. I mean, honestly, both are great. Some offices have they'll track them in separately, but I think that almost everyone tracks them like we do because we put them all in the same place because we aggregate our feedback on our bills. So emails are great because it's easy to just note. And so are calls because even if you leave a message, everyone listens to their voicemail and just takes down what they said. So yeah, both are great.
Yeah, it's really democracy in action.
So Matt, this letter will stay up on the TC Take Action website for the next little while. So if, so for example, if I want to share it out to the coalition or just, some other folks within the college, I can do that. What's the reach of?
Yeah, it's definitely live. And I think after this, we can put our heads together to link it a little more closely to the bill. We of course have the bill number, but also so I think just maybe on our end for our next round of letters, we can hone it down a little bit. Let's see, Francois, I think you're not able to submit. We can, maybe Mariana could help you with that via the chat or a private chat to figure out, to help you troubleshoot. Great question, Amy, about efficacy. Thank you, Mary, Penny, Naveed, all the thumbs up. Ruth, Mariana, Carolyn, we've got letters going out. I'm sure Chris is working diligently to send his letter out, put you on the spot. Again, I will just give us another moment or two to send those letters, but feel free to ask questions in the meantime.
The link to the session, you said you recorded this session, yeah? Okay, when do you share it out? What's the best way to get it out to the folks who weren't able to make it today?
Yeah, that's going to take a little bit of time. We have to post it on YouTube, but
okay.
Because we had about 100 people register.
That's great.
So we want to follow up with people who can make it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'll message you and privately just to see if I can help you troubleshoot. Okay, I think we'll start segueing to our next part of the program here. do we want to do Q&A, Nan, or what are you feeling?
Yeah, I think we can field some questions if folks have. I think we've laid out a pretty solid case. So I'm interested in what the audience would like to know from us beyond what's already been discussed.
Yeah, so please jump in via the chat, or we'll have to unmute folks if they put a hand up. I think that would be the best way of doing it.
Okay.
Virtual or physical hands. Let's see. Yeah, you should be able to unmute yourself now. I changed the setting. So please jump in with any questions or thoughts. So open up to the audience now. So if you do have anything on your mind, you can unmute yourself and share. Katie, I have a question for you. You've worked with students who might not be of voting age. Do you think you mentioned there's other ways of taking action? I think did a trip up to Albany, is that right? A trip to the state capitol? I think you're on.
Muted.
Oh, sorry, it wouldn't let me unmute. So we've had discussions about that, but during last week's webinar, we talked with Councilmember Chris Marte and also Gabriel Lewenstein, who works for Daniel O'Donnell's office. And they had some great suggestions about getting involved in your community outside of voting in this way, taking action through letter writing. Also acknowledging that schools are community spaces, and what you learn in school and get involved with in your own schools with either a student council if you have it, or something on that level really projects well into what you can do outside of those spaces with civic education. And one of those other opportunities for some schools that may have a pilot for the Seal of Civic Readiness that enables students to have different opportunities to get involved and kind of incentivize that community participation to learn more about the political process, the policymaking process. So those were some conversations we had. And then Nan also mentioned this editorial writing workshop that we'll be doing, where students will have a chance to learn how to think critically and how to convey these ideas and thoughts that they've been kind of questioning in the past couple of months about media literacy in more productive ways that can be shared widely. So those are a few things we've been working on.
Nice. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think we had a question in the chat by Elena about that exact thing, other ways you could get involved, and I see Nan is responding. So yeah, building awareness, building these habits of civics, habits of democracy, going to meet directly with legislators, sharing youth voice, because youth are also able to do this kind of letter writing and phone call. Even if you're under voting age, you can still certainly share your story from your student perspective. Lots of ways of getting involved. Certainly students have been at the forefront of major social movements over the years throughout the world. Yes.
Is Naveed still on the phone? Because I think he is he still on the Zoom rather? I think I saw his hand up.
Yes, I think we see Naveed. Please unmute yourself and share. Let's try that again. Let's see if that works for you. There you go.
Hi, thank you so much for having us. Thank you for that amazing presentation. I'm currently serving on the panel for educational policy. This is a question that comes up a lot amongst parents and parent advocates, parent leaders across the city, is how do we help our children process the deluge of information they're getting from media in a way that's healthy. Actually, the parents actually could use this help too, in my opinion. we have a lot of issues, as Nan mentioned, along socioeconomic lines in New York City public schools, where the availability of resources is pretty scarce if your school is in a zone that is relatively poor. And there are co-located schools in buildings. We have places where there are schools without libraries altogether, so never mind having a librarian. And we need some strong advocacy to make sure that the elementary schools especially have access to a library and a librarian who can help them with the sort of holistic literacy approach that only a school librarian can do. That's something that I grew up with in public schools in Brooklyn, and I still remember my school librarian to this day. So if there's any efforts along those lines, I would love to join. But for media literacy, I would like to bring something back to the panel. And I guess I'll speak with anyone at Teachers College who can reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat, or with Nan. I know you're also there. And I know that you were at one point on CEC3, where I also served until December. So let's get in touch. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yep. Happy to do that. I've, since I joined the center back in November, and I spent part of the winter kind of making the rounds with some of the parent groups on the school funding issue, because that's also been on the forefront of everyone's minds, you know, kind of the foundation aid formula funding and what happens later. And I know New York City's been working on fair student funding. So now I think it's time to, you know, shift to this media literacy endeavor as we progress in the legislative session. So
Man, yeah, I'll drop your email address in the chat along with mine. Okay.
Absolutely.
Please do feel free to follow up with me or Nan. If others want to put their emails in the chat, you're welcome to do that for future discussions. Advocacy is a long process. I know with Danny is Assemblymember Daniel is fond of talking about the persistence it took to pass the Marriage Equity Act, I think, right? It took him 10 years or so. So it is a long process. Any other advice, Margot, just to put you on the spot, any other thoughts for the advocates in the room? I see somebody mentioned community boards. That's a great idea too.
Oh, thanks. There we go. Absolutely. No, it did. It was took 10 years. And DASA also was such a long process to get through, but the effects have been so positive and important for the state, for everyone, for students. Other words of advice, honestly, I would say if there's a bill that you care about, you don't have to think too hard about it. Just call up your assembly member and say, hey, I really support this bill. I love it, and I really hope that you support it. I hope you vote for it. I hope you co-sponsor it. It's as simple as that. And being able to just quickly reach out is actually, it's for some reason, I think our constituents are very on top of it. And maybe some other constituents aren't, and they don't think like, oh, I really do have this access and this communication line to my local representative, my state representative. So that's
Upper West Side aren't bashful about speaking out.
Yeah. No, it's true, but it's good. It's really nice to see that kind of advocacy. I mean, like, I grew up here in the city, and I always went to public school, and people I had a great school libraries and everything, but people always thought like government is far away, even though it's right there. And so it's been nice to see, and in my real life and working life, and also just learn about how close and accessible it is. And so it's always really awesome to see when students get involved, or tell their parents, like, tell the assembly member, support blank, so that's really nice and really wonderful to see. And it's all just part of fitting it all together. It's such a big thing, whether you're learning about media literacy or about civic engagement, and it all really fits together. So
I think some of what you're saying ties back to why civic engagement, civic readiness, and civic learning is so important, because
so true.
Again, the center had compiled a paper, Jessica and my predecessor, Joe Rogers, have done a paper on the extent to which students were receiving civic learning and specifically hands-on civic engagement opportunities. And as I discussed in the library example, again, the disparities fell largely along socioeconomic and racial lines. And so if young people grow up thinking that government is far away, by the time they get to be a voting age, they're still going to think government is far away. And that's why, we really need to advance this issue as much as we can.
Yeah, it's so great. And it's so nice to actually be able to have a conversation with the constituent and talk about how, for example, certain legislation fits in with other law, or how the process works of testing out language, discussing it, bringing it up to Albany and taking it seeing where it fits in with everything else. So yeah, I like state government, and I like seeing how it all works. So I hope other people do too.
And we're glad you're here.
And I mentioned I see 13 letters, great start, and hope that the folks on this call, can continue working on those letters over the next little chunk of time we have remaining. Please also feel free to bring up any questions about the letter writing, any technical things facing, or you could also share your story. That you could echo the story that you just shared with your state legislator, if you want to share that with us right now, or maybe an idea that you have drafted that you might want to send off to your policymaker.
Oh, Naveed, do you still have your hand up, or was that from before? Okay. Oh, you have another question? Yes. Okay, Naveed has another question.
And not so much a question. So I was working with the mayor's office as I'm the executive director of No Limits Learning, and we were contracted to engage with a Civic Engagement Commission, which is out of the mayor's office, and they've been trying to get more young people involved in sort of the life of politics, to advocate for their needs. And I guess one of the things that was tasked to me was to find elementary, middle school, high school kids. We have a population of students that are very vocal, that ask to have their needs addressed, and I don't think they're being connected very well with state and city government. I tried to do a little bit of that. The contract ended, it was a 2-month period, September to November. And I would like to continue on that. I don't know if anyone here has had experience with the New York City Civic Engagement Commission, but I feel like there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, thanks for that. It sounds like a lot of people want to connect with them. I see Julie with a hand raised.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the really great presentation. I just wanted to share that in my high school, I went to a public high school in New Jersey. We had this thing called Civics and Government Institute, and it was what they call a small learning community. And there were about 200 kids. It was a big high school, and you could elect to be in it. And it was 3 years. We had English and history together in an elective, and it was a really, really cool experience. We had Congress, like mock Congress, and everyone had to write bills, and it was really cool. But because of the nature of electing yourself in it, and there being other small learning communities like the Center for Social Justice, it became a kind of de facto segregation within the high school. Civics and Government Institute was almost completely white, and the Center for Social Justice was almost completely people of color. So just from that personal experience, I was wondering, I guess this is a question for maybe Katie, like how would you address that and address something like that happening? Or yeah, or like yeah, how would you address that and how to prevent it? My question, if you know.
Thanks. Sorry, had some unmute trouble. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a question that's tricky to answer because it really is at a school by school basis. And with that particular situation of having like different topics of student participation, I find interesting, but also just generally with accessibility to civic involvement, you see those barriers that draw different racial and socioeconomic lines just by access to having like time. So time to get involved after school, time to get involved just generally in topics that I think intersect in like every way. So if like for social justice issues, civic participation issues, they're kind of one and the same. So I don't know if I can answer your question specifically, but I would say there's a lot of barriers to civic participation access, and schools can be a great space to help prevent limiting that access. But yeah, I it's a big question. So I don't know if you want to email about it and talk a bit more, I'd be happy to. Or if anyone else wants to jump into and share their thoughts.
Well, I wanted to add quickly. So while watching my Instagram feed, Shelley Mayer, who is my senator, recently put out a bill having to do with student governments and essentially would require student governments in places where they don't currently exist. So I think maybe that's a topic for a future session, but you know, I think it speaks to the fact that division affects all of us, right? Just because we see, you know, sort of whoever's perceived as the other, their issues are over there, that's still destructive. And we've got to figure out ways of kind of getting all hands to the pump in a collaborative way to work on these issues together, even if we're coming from, you know, different sides of the political spectrum, but also if we're coming at it from different perspective, whether it's a socioeconomic perspective or a racial perspective or a religious perspective. You know, there are times when affinity groups can be empowering, and then there are other times when, you know, they can foment division.
I'm so glad, Dan, you mentioned different political perspectives. You know, I'm looking at the letters here. We're up to 28, and they've got legislators, Republicans and Democrats. Of course, our initiative today is strictly nonpartisan. We've got letters to Cordell Clear, Danny O'Donnell, Inez Dickens, Liz Kruger, Michelle Hinchy, Shelley Mayer, Zelner Myrie, James Scoopus, Manny de los Santos, Rebecca Seawright, Will Barclay, Alex Borez, and more. So a great cross-section of New York State legislators. And again, if you are out of New York, there's still plenty to do using that Open States link. I want to, as we close up, I know we have just another minute, give a quick plug for TC Impact Day. This is another way of taking action in your community. We're looking for TC alumni to get to focus on a community project. So if you want to take action on something in your local school, you could do a read aloud, a book drive. If you want to do a park cleanup or a recycling effort, it's really up to you because you know what your community needs the best. Check out tcimpactday.org. I'm your point of contact on that. If you're a TC alum, happy to chat more about how to mobilize and reach out to TC alumni in your community. Nan, Chris, Margot, Katie, Mariana, and Michaela, thank you all so much for all of your efforts for helping make today possible. Any closing thoughts, Nan, before we wrap up?
No, just that, I appreciate everyone's participation today and for coming and for writing your letters. And please feel free to reach out with any additional thoughts or ideas you may have to advance this issue. I guess to Katie's point, to Matt's point, Congress recently passed the democracy. It was part of the Civics Saves Democracy Act, which was the bill. Ended up being a $20 million appropriation in the omnibus budget, which is the most significant investment in civics education in decades. And it was a bipartisan effort. It can be done. So thank you all.
Thank you all so much. Have a great day.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.